The first spark the March wind carried a crisp bite through the sprawling Ashford estate, rattling the young buds in the gardens and sending ripples across the mirrored surface of the central fountain. Inside the nursery wing, the world was warm, hushed, and filled with the faint smell of lavender and fresh linen. Naomi Harris adjusted the thin muslin blanket over baby Grace's shoulders, the child's soft breathing steady against her chest. Grace had been fussy all morning, a dry cough scratching its way up from her tiny lungs. And Naomi, who had learned the baby's rhythms better than anyone, had been gently rocking her in the wide cream-colored armchair, tapping her back in. A slow, patient rhythm that always soothed her. Naomi wasn't just the maid. She had been the caretaker, the one who came running in the dark hours when Grace cried, the one who knew which lullabies eased her into sleep and which kind of milk warmed her tummy just right. To Naomi, Grace wasn't a job, she was a life. She was responsible for a fragile soul entrusted into her arms every day. And though the baby wasn't hers by blood, the love was as real and fierce as if she had carried her herself. The hallway outside was quiet until the sudden click of high heels rang against the polished oak floorboards. The sound grew louder. Deliberate, a rhythm Naomi had learned to recognize. Olivia Ashford, the lady of the house, was approaching. The nursery door opened without a knock, and Olivia stepped in wearing a flowing silk dressing gown, her platinum hair swept into a perfect chignon. The winter sunlight from the tall windows fell over her like a spotlight, catching the diamonds at her ears. Her expression, however, was all frost. "What are you doing?" Her voice sliced through the warmth of the nursery like a shard of ice. Naomi looked up, startled, still rocking the baby. "She was coughing," Naomi explained softly. Just helping her clear her chest." "She's been—" "Give her to me," Olivia snapped, crossing the room in a rush of perfume and silk. Without waiting for Naomi's compliance, she plucked Grace from her arms with a force that made the child let out a startled cry. "I don't remember asking you to manhandle my daughter." Naomi's stomach dropped, a wave of heat rising under her skin. "Mrs. Ashford," she was struggling to breathe. "Oh, don't start." Olivia's eyes narrowed, her lips curling into something between disdain and calculated outrage. "I come in here to find you banging her back like she's a sack. A flower. Do you think I don't know what that can do to a newborn? You people—" She stopped herself, but the venom in her tone made the implication clear. Naomi stood frozen, the sting of those words landing deeper than Olivia probably intended. Them too. She wanted to defend herself, to point out that gentle back-patting was what had stopped Grace's coughing fit. But she knew better than to expect reason from Olivia when she was in one of her moods. What Naomi didn't expect was for Olivia to raise her voice, not just loud enough for the nursery, but loud enough for the open corridor outside. "You'd better stay away from my child, Naomi. I won't have you trying to worm your way into this family through her." The accusation was so outlandish it stole Naomi's breath. "That's not true," she said, her voice trembling but steady. "I love this child, and I'd never hurt her." Olivia's smile turned thin, a predator-scenting victory. "Careful. You don't want me telling my husband that our daughter's caretaker is rough-handling her when I'm not looking." It was then that Naomi understood this wasn't just about a baby's cough, it was about control. 2 nights ago, Naomi had been delivering a fresh bottle to the library when she had glimpsed Olivia in the firelit room, leaning too close to a man who was not her husband. The man Philip Royce, a charming family friend who had been visiting far too often, had his hand on Olivia's waist, his voice low and intimate. Olivia had seen Naomi in that split second before she slipped out unnoticed. Now the pieces fit together. Olivia wasn't trying to protect Grace, she was trying to silence Naomi before Naomi could respond. Olivia's husband, Charles Ashford, appeared in the doorway. Tall, commanding, still in his tailored shirt and cufflinks from the morning's board meeting, he took in the scene, his wife clutching their crying daughter, Naomi standing rigid and pale. "What's going on here?" His voice was firm, but there was an edge to it, the kind that made staff tread carefully. "She was hurting her," Olivia said without hesitation, her tone trembling just enough to sound believable. "I walked in and she had Grace in some kind of chokehold." "That's a lie," Naomi blurted before she could stop herself. She was coughing. Enough, Charles said sharply, his gaze snapping to Naomi. You work for us, Miss Harris. You do not lay a hand on my child in any way that could cause harm. Is that clear? Naomi felt the humiliation burn in her throat, but she forced the words out. Yes, sir. Go downstairs and see to the laundry, Charles ordered, his tone final as Naomi left the nursery, Grace's cries echoing behind her. She caught a glimpse of Olivia over her shoulder, a faint, victorious smirk curving her lips. It was the kind of smile that said, I've just made my first move. Down in the laundry room, Naomi's hands shook as she loaded the machines, the rhythm of work doing nothing to calm her thoughts. She had never been accused of anything like this in her life, and now her job, her home, and her reputation in this small, watchful town were hanging by a thread, all because she had seen something she wasn't supposed to, what Naomi didn't. Nor was that in the hours to come, the very walls of the Ashford estate would start recording their secrets, and someone she least expected was about to become her unlikely ally. The quiet watcher the rest of the afternoon moved with a strange, heavy rhythm inside the Ashford estate. Conversations between staff felt quieter, more deliberate, as if everyone had sensed the tension that had passed between the lady of the house and her maid. Naomi moved through her tasks without her usual pace, the memory of Olivia's accusations still raw. Every time she pictured Grace's startled cry as she was ripped from her arms, a hollow ache bloomed in her chest. She had been in service work for over a decade, had worked in 3 different households before this one, and not once had she been accused of mistreating a child. That accusation, whispered in the wrong ears, could travel faster than truth. And Olivia knew it. By late afternoon, the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting golden light across the gardens. Naomi was folding a stack of fresh towels in the service corridor when she heard soft footsteps approach. She looked up to find Henry, the estate's long-serving butler, standing with an envelope in hand. His face was unreadable, but his voice was low. You need to see this, he said, glancing over his shoulder before passing it to her. Inside was a single photograph, slightly grainy, printed from a security camera feed. It showed the nursery from earlier that morning. Naomi seated in the armchair was holding Grace upright and gently patting her back. The time stamp glowed in the corner. Henry folded his hands behind his back. The camera in the east nursery corner is new. Mr. Ashford had it installed last month after a break-in scare. It records continuously. I took the liberty of pulling the footage before anyone else could. Naomi felt her breath catch. So this proves she was lying? Henry's eyes softened just slightly. It proves what happened. Whether that matters to the right people, well, that's another matter entirely. But you should know Mr. Ashford will see this. Naomi's stomach twisted. She wasn't sure which was worse, Charles believing her only because a camera told him to, or the possibility that he'd see the truth and still choose to protect his wife. That evening, dinner in the formal dining room carried the brittle tension of a gathering where everyone knew something had happened, but no one dared speak of it openly. Olivia sat at the head of the table in a deep emerald gown, her expression composed, her conversation light. Charles said little, his focus shifting between the roast lamb on his plate and the wine in his glass. Naomi served silently, the silver serving spoon warm in her hand, her eyes fixed on her work. It wasn't until after the meal, when the guests had retreated to the parlor and the staff began clearing dishes, that Charles appeared in the kitchen doorway. His gaze found Naomi instantly. A word, he said. It wasn't a request. She followed him down the corridor. Charles leaned back in his chair, his eyes fixed on Naomi. She said you were hurting her. This shows otherwise. Naomi's voice was quiet but steady. She wants me gone because I saw her with Philip Royce 2 nights ago in the library. It wasn't innocent, Mr. Ashford. His jaw tightened, his fingers steepling under his chin. You're certain of what you saw? I don't lie, sir, Naomi replied. The words hung between them, heavy and unshakable. He looked toward the fire for a long moment before speaking. If that's true, try again. She won't stop until she's destroyed your reputation, because if you speak up, her own standing is at risk. That means I can't give her an opening, and neither can you. Naomi understood the warning beneath his words. She nodded once. I'll keep doing my job, but I won't let her put that child at risk to protect herself. Flicker of something passed over Charles's face, admiration, perhaps, or the beginning of trust. And we're agreed, he said. You stay close to Grace, I'll handle the rest. But as Naomi left the study and walked back toward the staff wing, a question settled in her mind like a shadow she couldn't shake. If Charles truly believed her now, and if he suspected his wife was capable of lying so boldly, what exactly was he planning to handle? And just how far was he willing to go to protect the truth? The first trap the morning broke with a sharp chill, the kind that made even the marble floors of the Ashford estate feel unwelcoming. Naomi arrived in the nursery before sunrise, a habit she had adopted since Olivia's accusations began. The earlier she was there, the less opportunity her employer's wife had to claim Naomi was lurking or interfering with Grace's care. She moved quietly around the room, opening the curtains to a thin slice of dawn, humming softly as she tidied the blankets and arranged the baby's toys in their usual order. Grace stirred in her crib, her little fingers curling toward the light, and Naomi lifted her gently, feeling the weight and warmth settle against her shoulder. In that small moment, with the child breathing steadily into her neck, it almost felt as though the rest of the house and its troubles didn't exist. But peace in the Ashford estate was never more than a fleeting visitor. The first hint of trouble came mid-morning, when Olivia appeared in the nursery doorway dressed not in her usual silk lounging attire, but in a sharply tailored cream suit, her hair pinned in a style so precise it seemed to defy movement. She carried a tray with a crystal glass and a small porcelain bowl, an oddly domestic gesture for someone who rarely fetched anything herself. I thought I'd bring my daughter her morning fruit, she announced, stepping inside with a sweetness that made Naomi's skin prickle. Naomi offered a polite nod but didn't reach for the tray. She's just had her bottle, Mrs. Ashford. It might be best to wait a bit before giving her solids. Olivia's smile didn't falter, but there was a tightness around her eyes. Are you questioning my decisions about my own child? I'm thinking of her comfort, Naomi replied evenly, though she could feel the tension rising. Olivia set the tray on the small table by the rocking chair and crouched near Grace's play mat. Just a little taste then, she said, scooping some of the mashed peach from the bowl and holding it toward the baby. Grace turned her head away, uninterested, but Olivia persisted, pressing the spoon closer until a bit smeared on the child's lips. Naomi stepped forward, her instinct telling her something about this scene was wrong. Mrs. Ashford, she's not. The words died in her throat as Olivia suddenly straightened, her voice rising in a pitch of alarm that carried easily into the hall. Oh my God, she's choking. Naomi, what have you done? Naomi's eyes widened. She's not choking, Olivia scooped Grace into her arms, feigning panic. You fed her too quickly. She's gagging. Her cries were loud, theatrical, perfectly designed for any passing witness. And right on cue, Charles appeared in the doorway, his gaze darting between his wife's frantic performance and Naomi's stunned stillness. Naomi's hands tightened into fists at her sides, her voice low but unwavering. Sir, she wasn't choking. Mrs. Ashford insisted on feeding her, and I heard her gag from the hall, Olivia interrupted, her tone dripping with injured authority. You've been careless again. First yesterday, now this. For a heartbeat, Naomi thought Charles might believe it. But then his eyes shifted, just slightly, toward the corner of the nursery where the small black lens of the security camera sat unobtrusively above the bookshelf. Enough, he said, his voice clipped. Olivia, take her to the kitchen and let Henry check her. Olivia hesitated, clearly not expecting that response, but she complied, sweeping out of the room with the child. Charles lingered only a moment longer, meeting Naomi's gaze with an expression she couldn't read before following his wife. When they were gone, Naomi's knees felt unsteady. She had known Olivia might try something, but the speed and precision of the act rattled her. This wasn't a reckless outburst, it was calculated, rehearsed. And if Charles hadn't been the kind of man to remember the camera, Naomi had no Doubt the accusation would have stuck. The rest of the morning passed in uneasy silence. Naomi avoided the main hallways, keeping to the staff passages while she attended to her duties. She overheard fragments of conversation, Olivia's light, airy laughter in the drawing room, Charles's deeper voice in what sounded like clipped, deliberate responses, but no mention of the nursery incident. By early afternoon, Henry found her in the linen room. "He's reviewed the footage," the butler said without preamble. "He knows the truth." Relief washed over her, but it was tempered by the reality that knowing the truth hadn't stopped Olivia yet, and it wouldn't. Henry seemed to read her thoughts. "She's dangerous because she's patient," he said. "But the more she pushes, the closer she gets to revealing herself to the wrong person." That evening, Charles requested Naomi bring Grace to the study before dinner. When she arrived, the fire was lit and the curtains drawn against the cold. Charles sat behind his desk, the faint glow from the monitor casting his face in half shadow. "I've seen enough to know she'd try again," he said without preamble. "The footage from today will be secured, as will everything from this room forward. But you must understand, if you stay, you'll be in the middle of this until it ends, and I can't promise it will be quick." Naomi looked down at Grace, who was gnawing on her teething ring with perfect innocence, oblivious to the war brewing over her small life. "She doesn't deserve to be caught in the middle of it," Naomi said quietly. "So if staying means I can keep her safe, then I stay." For the first time, Charles's expression softened into something close to gratitude. "Then we'll play her game," he said, his voice dropping into something like a vow. "And when she overplays her hand, we'll make sure she never gets the chance to hold the cards again." What neither of them knew was that Olivia, in her own wing of the house, was already working on her next move. And the next trap wouldn't be confined to the nursery. The public stage 2 days passed without incident, though the silence felt more like the stillness before a storm than any true peace. Naomi kept her routine as tight as clockwork, moving through the estate like someone who had learned to navigate a field of traps in the dark. She stayed close to Grace, her hours a steady rhythm of feedings, playtime, and naps, never letting the baby out of her sight for long. Olivia, for her part, was polite in the brittle way that hinted at something brewing beneath the surface. Her smiles were precise, her greetings measured, and she made a point of appearing in the nursery only briefly each day, as if she were waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The moment came on a Saturday morning when Charles had business in town and several of his associates were invited to a charity luncheon at the estate. It was an event Olivia relished an opportunity to parade her. Naomi rose, adjusting the baby on her hip, and stepped toward the group. The women cooed over Grace, their manicured hands reaching to stroke her hair or touch her tiny fingers. Naomi kept her expression pleasant, though she noticed Olivia's eyes flicker with something sharper, a calculation. "Naomi is our maid," Olivia said sweetly to the group. "Though she does spend rather a lot of time with Grace, I suppose she thinks of herself as a sort of second mother." The remark was delivered lightly, but the ripple it caused was immediate. The women exchanged quick, knowing glances, their smiles tightening in that way polite society does when gossip has been planted. Naomi's jaw tightened, but she kept her tone even. "I care for Grace while Mrs. Ashford attends to her duties, that's all." Olivia's smile didn't falter. "Oh, of course. It's just that sometimes I wonder if you don't get overattached, isn't that right, darling?" She looked directly at Grace as though expecting the infant to confirm her accusation. The women laughed lightly, and Naomi felt the flush of humiliation rise to her cheeks. Before she could respond, Olivia reached out and took Grace from her arms, holding her high for the group to admire. "See how she lights up when she's with me?" Olivia said, her voice dripping with faux affection. But as she turned, the child let out a distressed whimper, her small hands reaching back toward Naomi. "She's just tired," Naomi said. Reaching out to take her back, Olivia hesitated, then allowed it, but not without one final barb. "Tired, yes. Or perhaps unsettled from too much handling by the help." She smiled at the guests again, as though she had made a clever joke, and the women gave polite chuckles before moving on. Naomi stood rooted to the spot, Grace clinging to her neck, the laughter echoing like a slap. She knew exactly what Olivia had done, planted a seed of suspicion in front of witnesses, making sure the whispers would spread beyond the walls of the estate. Later, when the luncheon ended and the guests departed, Naomi returned to the nursery, her hands still trembling with anger. She had barely settled Grace into her crib when Charles appeared in the doorway. His expression was unreadable. "I heard what she said in the garden," he began, his voice low. Naomi looked up sharply. "Then you know she's trying to discredit." May, I know," he replied, stepping inside and closing the door. "And so do half the women she spoke to. Which means her game is getting riskier. Public lies can be disproven just as easily as private ones if you have the right proof." He moved to the corner of the room and adjusted the position of the discreet security camera so that it now had a clear view of the crib, the rocking chair, and the play area. "From this point on," he said, "everything that happens in here will be recorded from multiple angles. If she tries anything again, it won't be your word against hers, it will be her words against herself." Naomi studied him, the faint glow of the baby monitor casting soft shadows on his face. There was something in his tone, not just determination, but a quiet, simmering anger that made her wonder if this was still about her, or if he was beginning to build a case for something much larger. Outside, the late afternoon light faded into gold, the gardens glowing as if nothing in the world could disturb their peace. But Naomi knew better. Olivia had just tested her first public strike, and people like her didn't retreat when it failed, they escalated. The breaking point, the air inside the Ashford estate felt heavier in the days following Olivia's public display in the garden. Even with the luncheon over and the guests gone, Naomi could sense the lingering residue of whispered conversations and raised brows. The subtle change in how some of the visiting staff and part-time workers glanced at her told her that Olivia's words had not simply vanished into the afternoon air. They had been planted like seeds in a garden, seeds that could sprout at any moment if watered with the right kind of gossip. But Naomi didn't shrink. She had learned that retreat only emboldened predators, and Olivia was nothing if not a predator in designer heels. Charles's demeanor toward her had shifted too, though it was a quieter change. He was watching more, speaking less, and moving around the house in ways that seemed calculated, walking into rooms unexpectedly, standing in corners where he could see without being seen. The installation of the additional cameras in the nursery had been done discreetly, and Naomi could feel their small, unblinking eyes following every moment she spent with Grace. It was a strange comfort, knowing that the truth now had a witness. No one could intimidate or manipulate, but Olivia had her own way of adapting. She avoided direct confrontation for nearly a week, limiting her visits to the nursery and never alone. She was always accompanied by a friend, a visiting relative, or one of the other staff, as though determined to create a pattern of witnesses to whatever she might later claim. Naomi recognized it for what it was, a setup in progress, as she braced herself for the day the trap would spring. It came on a Thursday morning, when the sky outside was still damp from an early drizzle and the house had settled into its usual mid-morning rhythm. Naomi was in the nursery, kneeling on the rug with Grace, stacking brightly colored blocks while the baby babbled happily. She heard the faint click of heels in the hall and looked up to see Olivia in the doorway, holding a small, swaddled bundle. "I thought Grace could use a new toy," Olivia said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She stepped inside and unwrapped the bundle to reveal a porcelain doll in a delicate dress, the kind that looked more suited for a display case than a child's hands. "Isn't she lovely?" Naomi's first instinct was caution. "It's beautiful, Mrs. Ashford, but perhaps a bit fragile for her age." "Oh, nonsense," Olivia said lightly, kneeling beside them and setting the doll down. Grace reached for it with eager hands, and Naomi moved to guide her, making sure the porcelain head didn't knock against the hardwood floor. That was when it happened so fast Naomi almost didn't register it. Olivia's elbow accidentally nudged the doll from Grace's grasp, sending it toppling forward. The fragile head hit the floor and cracked with a sharp sound. Olivia gasped, her voice rising in alarm. "Oh, my God, Naomi!" "You let her break it." She scooped the doll up, turning it so the crack was visible, her tone pitched perfectly, too. carry through the open nursery door. Do you have any idea how dangerous this could have been? She could have cut herself. Naomi's pulse surged. Mrs. Ashford, you knocked it from her hands? I was right here, and don't you dare blame me for your negligence, Olivia snapped. The sweetness gone from her voice now, replaced by something colder. She shifted Grace into her arms, murmuring loud enough for anyone passing to hear, I should have known better than to leave her in your care. Before Naomi could respond, Charles appeared in the doorway, drawn by the raised voices. His gaze moved from Olivia's accusatory posture to the cracked doll in her hand, and then to Naomi's steady, unflinching stance. For a moment, the silence between them felt like the estate itself had stopped breathing. Put the doll down, Charles said to Olivia, his voice low but edged with steel. Olivia blinked, caught off guard. Charles, don't you see? I said put it down, he repeated, stepping into the room. She hesitated, then set the doll on the dresser. I've already reviewed the footage. Charles continued, his gaze fixed on her. The doll slipped. Because you pushed it, deliberately, and you did it while staring directly at the camera. The mask of polished composure faltered for the first time in weeks. You're twisting this, Olivia said, but the sharpness in her tone betrayed. No, Charles replied evenly. You've been trying to manufacture a case against Naomi. Since the day she saw you in the library with Philip Royce, every attempt has failed. Because you underestimate how closely I've been watching. He glanced at Naomi, and for the first time, his words carried the weight of something more than defense, they carried alliance. She stays. You, however, are running out of rope. Olivia's lips parted, but whatever retort she had died there. She turned without a word and swept from the room. Her perfume lingering like a fading warning, Naomi exhaled slowly. Her hand still steadying Grace, who had gone back to gnawing on a teething ring as if nothing had happened. She knew this wasn't over. In fact, Olivia's silence as she left told Naomi the opposite. It meant the next move would be more dangerous. The final reckoning the day of Olivia's last move arrived under a deceptively calm sky. Morning light spilled through the estate's tall windows in soft gold, casting warm patterns across the marble floors. The scent of freshly brewed coffee drifted from the kitchen, mingling with the faint perfume of the rose arrangements that Margaret had placed in the entry hall. To anyone visiting for the first time, it might have looked like a portrait of peace. But Naomi, after weeks of maneuvering against Olivia's subtle and not-so-subtle strikes, knew better than to mistake this stillness for safety. She kept Grace close as she moved through her morning duties, playing with her in the nursery and later taking her for a short walk in the enclosed garden, where the crisp air seemed to clear both their heads. Yet even there, Naomi could not shake the sensation of eyes on her. Whether it was the echo of past days or something truly lurking in the shadows, she could not tell, but her instincts had rarely been wrong in this house. By mid-morning, Charles was preparing to leave for a board meeting downtown, a rare absence that Naomi suspected Olivia had been waiting for. He paused at the nursery door before departing, his gaze lingering on her. Keep the doors locked, he said quietly. If anything feels wrong, call me first and then Thomas. We've added more eyes to the cameras this week. You're not alone. His tone carried an unspoken weight, as if he too knew that the next strike was imminent. The house settled into an uneasy rhythm once he left. Staff went about their work, but there was a tension under the surface, like everyone was waiting for something to happen. It came at noon when Olivia appeared in the doorway of the sunroom where Naomi and Grace were enjoying a patch of winter sunlight. She was dressed to perfection, navy sheath dress, pearl earrings, a faintly amused smile curling at her lips. I've invited a reporter to visit this afternoon, she announced breezily, as though she were mentioning a casual tea guest. They're doing a piece on prominent families? I thought it would be nice for them to meet Grace. Naomi's stomach tightened. Does Charles know? Olivia's smile didn't falter. Why, of course. Well, he will when he reads the article. Before Naomi could respond, footsteps echoed from the main hall, and a woman in a tailored coat stepped inside carrying a leather satchel. Olivia greeted her like an old friend and ushered her toward the sunroom. This is Naomi, our caretaker. Olivia said with a sweetness that made the title sound like an insult. "She's with Grace most of the time. I thought you might want to speak to her, get a sense of the bond they share." It was all too clear. Olivia wasn't here to showcase family warmth. She was here to twist a narrative, to stage something that could be manipulated in print. Naomi answered the reporter's questions politely but kept her responses factual, careful not to give Olivia any emotional soundbite that could be reframed. Still, she could feel the weight of Olivia's gaze on her the entire time, searching for a crack in her composure. The interview ended after half an hour, the reporter leaving with polite thanks and promises to be in touch. But Naomi noticed something unsettling when the woman had bent to say goodbye to Grace. She'd slipped a folded piece of paper into the blanket without a word. After Olivia escorted her out, Naomi retrieved it discreetly. It was a business card with a note on the back in neat handwriting. "Be careful. She's trying to set you up." "I've seen this before." Naomi slipped the card into her pocket, her heart pounding. Whoever that reporter was, she clearly knew more than she had said aloud, and it confirmed what Naomi already suspected. The game was about to turn dangerous. It happened faster than she expected. Less than an hour later, Naomi was in the nursery, changing Grace when Olivia burst in, her voice high with feigned horror. "What are you doing?" "She's crying. What have you done to her?" The accusation was sharp and immediate, loud enough for staff in the hallway to hear. Naomi froze, knowing the cameras would capture the truth but also recognizing the precision of the attack. "She's fine," Naomi said evenly, lifting Grace into her arms. "You're making her cry by shouting." But Olivia was already calling for Thomas, her tone urgent. "Come here, now. You need to see this. She's hurting her." Thomas arrived within seconds, his eyes moving from Olivia's theatrics to Naomi's calm, steady hold on the baby. Before Olivia could spin her version further, Thomas spoke. "Mrs. Ashford, you may want to know that every angle of this room is being recorded, sound and all. Mr. Ashford had it upgraded last week." For the first time, Olivia's performance cracked. A flicker of panic crossed her face before she masked it with indignation. "So now we're spying on the staff?" "On everyone," Thomas replied evenly, "for safety." Before the moment could spiral, Charles's voice cut through from the doorway. He had returned earlier than expected, his presence radiating a quiet authority that froze the air in the room. "I think it's time we all watched something together," he said. Within minutes, the nursery footage from the last 10 minutes was playing on the study's large monitor. It showed Naomi calmly tending to Grace, the baby cooing until Olivia's sudden entrance and shouting startled her into tears. The sound was clear, undeniable. Olivia's accusations hung in the air like smoke, and then dissipated under the weight of the truth. Charles turned to his wife. "Enough. You've lied, you've staged scenes, and you've tried to destroy the one person who has done nothing but care for our daughter. I have the footage, I have the witnesses, and I have more than enough to take to the court. But I'd rather end this here and now." Olivia's eyes narrowed. "You think you can cut me out?" "I don't think," Charles said, his voice cold as steel. "I know, you've crossed every line. From this moment on, you are not to enter the nursery or be alone with Grace. Legal proceedings begin tomorrow. And if you so much as speak another lie about Naomi, I will make sure every person whose opinion you value sees exactly who you are on these recordings." The silence that followed was heavy. Olivia stood very still, her expression unreadable, before turning sharply and leaving without a word. The click of her heels on the marble floor faded down the hall. Charles faced Naomi, then his voice softer. "It's over. She won't touch you again. Not here. Not anywhere." Naomi exhaled, the weight of weeks lifting from her shoulders. Grace, blissfully unaware of the war fought around her, reached up to touch Naomi's cheek. And in that moment, Naomi knew she had done more than survive. She had protected something pure in a place poisoned by lies. As the winter sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the estate, Naomi carried Grace back to the nursery. The house felt different now, not entirely free of danger, but shifted, its walls no longer echoing with Olivia's manipulations, but with something steadier: trust, safety, and the knowledge that when truth has proof on its side, Even the most elaborate lies cannot stand forever.